feel better on the weekend. Give my life a bit of meaning. Let me stay where I'm in phase. I feel better on the weekend. I feel better on the weekend. Give my life a bit of meaning. Let me stay where I'm in phase. I feel better on the weekend.
Welcome to Cyber Threat Intel, your go-to source for the latest updates, news, and insights on cyber threats. Our goal is to arm you with the knowledge to protect yourself in the digital age, whether you're a cybersecurity professional or just curious about the threats lurking in the digital shadows. Make sure to subscribe now on YouTube or your favorite podcast listening platform to join us on the front lines of cybersecurity, because in the world of cyber threats, knowledge is power. Welcome to Cyber Threat Intel. I'm your host, John Good, and this is episode number 26. It is Tuesday, April 30th, 2024. How you doing today? You doing well? Glad to see it. Glad to hear it. Well, if you are new to the show, welcome. Whether you're listening to the live stream or the on-demand replay or podcast, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. Glad to have you back. Glad to have you still consuming the content and joining us to make sure to get all your cyber threat intel for your cybersecurity career or because you're interested in cybersecurity. Now, if you are new, typically what we do with these shows is we give people a few minutes to tune in. So grab a snack, grab a drink, grab something to get you through the content. And we go through some show notes, and then we'll hop into the content and kick things off and do all the things that we need to do for the show. So that's typically the run of the show. As far as finding the show, depending on how you're listening or consuming the show right now, you might be consuming it a few different ways, right? First of all, we do a live stream. So this whole show is live streamed on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter, on LinkedIn for this episode. So all on the John Good Cyber page or John Good Cyber channel. So that's how you can find us. And you can join the live stream, chat. It's all on the actual, on the video. So you'll be able to do that. You can obviously watch the on-demand replay if you missed it. The other way that you can get the content is you can listen to the podcast. So we put all the audio out on podcast platforms, Spotify, iTunes, all of those popular platforms. All you got to do is search for Cyber Threat Intel. Again, Cyber Threat Intel, the name of the show, and you'll find us. We'll pop up right on there. The other thing that you can do is you can go to cyberthreatintel.com. That's our website. We have all the platforms listed on there, so you can find all that information on there as well. And if you want to get the article feed, so all the articles that we cover in the episodes, as well as other articles that we put in there with highlights and notes and things like that, then you can find the article feed on the website as well. So that's another reason to go to the website. Now, if you have professional certifications, CISSP, Security Plus, whatever, right? There's a whole bunch of them that are out there that exist. Typically, a lot of those require ongoing continuing education. So education credits, webinars, trainings, things like that. If you don't know, you can claim this show for half a CPE each. Now, with that being said, one of the things that some of the vendors are very particular about is that you need some kind of registration or certificate of completion around that. So the best way to do that is watch the live stream and chat in the live stream your name. So that way you're immortalized in this stream, because we put the chat on the display on the screen. So you'll be able to see that and take a screenshot of that as your evidence for your credit to get your CPEs or CEUs, whichever term that your vendor uses, right? So again, you can get half CPE for each show. And so that means 2 CPEs per week. And over the course of a year, that's over 100 CPEs just for free to maintain your certification. So don't wait until the last minute to do that. Make sure that you get that free value and you take advantage of that for sure. So with that being said, we still have some people that are hopping on the stream. So while we allow them to get on the stream and get tuned in, we'll take a second to talk about our sponsor for this episode, Cyber Training Pro. And I will see you on the other side. Are you tired of overpaying for cybersecurity training? Are you interested in training from industry professionals? Are you looking for cybersecurity career services? If you answered yes to any of those questions, then cybertrainingpro.com is the perfect platform for you. At Cyber Training Pro, we're a one-stop shop for all your cybersecurity needs. We can train you for industry certifications or just improve your overall knowledge and skills in a certain area. Unlike other platforms, we don't stop there. We can also coach you throughout your career, practice your interview skills, or create a high-performing resume with our career services. CybertrainingPro.com isn't just another training platform. Students get exclusive access to our private community where we go beyond training courses to provide additional content, tips and tricks, and engagement with both other students and staff. Look, by the year 2025, there could be as many as 3.5 million job openings in cybersecurity. With so much opportunity, why not maximize your career potential with a platform that cares about your success? Come join us at cybertrainingpro.com and start building your future today. All right, thanks to Cyber Training Pro for sponsoring this episode. We love our sponsors here. Our sponsors are what help makes this possible, to make this content, to produce it, to give it out to you for free, right? So we always like to show love for our sponsors. We highly recommend that you go check out our sponsors and show them your support as well, because it is very advantageous to have high quality things like this for free, for sure, to help your career, to help you get further. So if you're a company and you're looking to sponsor content, on the other hand, we want to have you as sponsors for sure. Make sure to check out the description, because there is more information about how you can kick off that conversation to actually sponsor content. And we'd love to talk to you about future opportunities about sponsoring content. So definitely check that out. And make sure you grab your Cyber Threat Intel merch, right? There's a lot of different merch, mugs, shirts. There's also some other John Good Cyber merch on there as well that I highly recommend grabbing. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and we're going to flip over to my screen and we're going to kick off the content here. All right. So first article here, CISA unveils guidelines for AI and critical infrastructure. The Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency on Monday released safety and security guidelines for critical infrastructure, a move that comes just days after the Department of Homeland Security announced the formation of a safety and security board focused on the same topic. We did cover that previously on a previous episode on this show, actually. The guidelines for critical infrastructure owners and operators also fulfills CISA's obligations under the Biden administration's October executive order on artificial intelligence. The guidelines are meant to address both the opportunities made possible by artificial intelligence for critical infrastructure, which spans 16 sectors, including farming and information technology, and the ways it could be weaponized or misused. Remember, anytime there's technology, right, just because you develop a certain technology for a specific reason or use case, there's always multiple use cases or ways that technology can be abused, repurposed, right? And that's where a lot of these, especially military kind of things or technologies, really get in trouble, because things like satellites, right? That's totally something that can be used for good and for bad. And so there's a lot of restrictions around those kinds of things, right? And that's just an example, but that's how they can be weaponized or misused, right? And so that's really important. Artificial intelligence, same kind of idea, right? We've seen them used for great things to help write certain things or help you develop ideas. We've also seen malicious users start making malware with artificial intelligence. So it is definitely one of those things that could be used both ways, for sure. The article says the guidelines emphasize a range of steps, including understanding the dependencies of AI vendors that operators might be working with in inventorying AI use cases. They also encourage critical infrastructure owners to create procedures for reporting AI security risk and continually testing AI systems for vulnerabilities. Now, one of the things that we see a lot with artificial intelligence and kind of the direction that we think it might head down eventually is that these AI systems can do things like decision making, right? And that's why it's really, really concerned about any kind of security risks or vulnerabilities in these systems and abuses of these systems, because if they're used to make decisions, right? What if it uses bad data? What if it doesn't make the right decision because of whatever data it's fed, or a vulnerability was exploited, or some kind of risk existed, right? There's all these kinds of questions, and that's why it's a very serious thing, especially when we're talking about critical infrastructure, right? Talking about the power grid, talking about water, power plants, all those kinds of things. It's going to be an important issue, right? Now, the article says opportunities related to AI span categories, including operational awareness, customer service automation, physical security, and forecasting, according to the guidelines. So obviously, depending on whatever it's being used for, there's going to be a varying level of concern, right? Because customer service automation, you might not be as concerned about it as you would be for like forecasting or maybe physical security of some of this stuff, right? Because that is going to be a different concern if somebody can get physical access versus maybe a customer that is just upset because it didn't necessarily work as they were expecting, right? So those are differences. So really interesting article and concept just as far as the government and critical infrastructure starting to look at adopting artificial intelligence and start using it in what they do, right? I think that'll be a longer term play because certainly critical infrastructure is going to take a while to kind of get things right, but interesting nonetheless, right? All right, let's move on to the next article here. Muddling Mercat poses nation-state DNS mystery. During an investigation into the activities of a threat group providing domain name system, DNS infrastructure, for illicit online gambling sites, threat researcher Renee Burton discovered something completely novel. Convert traffic immune to China's government-run firewall using open DNS resolvers and mail records to communicate. The China-linked group, dubbed Muddling Mercat, has demonstrated its ability to get specific DNS packets through the Great Firewall, one of the technologies separating China's internet from the rest of the world. Burton, vice president of threat research at network security firm Infoblox, wrote in an analysis published this week. The goal of the capability remains unclear. Most likely, it's for reconnaissance or establishing the foundations of a DNS denial of service attack, Burton says. But the demonstrated expertise and ability to pierce the GFW, the Great Firewall, deserves additional research, she says. The threat research comes as the governments of the United States and other nations have warned that China's military has infiltrated critical infrastructure networks with the goal of pre-positioning their cyber operators for potential future conflicts. While many threat researchers have noted China-linked hacking groups' expertise in finding and exploiting zero days and edge devices such as firewalls and virtual private network VPN appliances, the current research underscores their capabilities in utilizing the domain name system for their own purposes. So anything to do with computers and China and how they kind of isolate their environment is certainly interesting because they go to great lengths to do that, right? Also North Korea, right? Both of those countries certainly put a lot of effort into kind of restricting their environments. Now, obviously, a country like China has tremendous resources compared to a country like North Korea, and they are going to be way more capable of doing certain things like restricting internet and really keeping traffic out that they don't want to get in there. But even just looking at this in general, right, being able to use DNS in a way that's maybe not expected or getting through something so protected as this Great Firewall is always of interest, right? Because it's one of those things where when we look at companies in general or networks, right, there's no impenetrable force, right, or impenetrable network. There is always some way that you can get into these different systems or networks or some vulnerability, some risk that allows an attacker to get in, but it is a matter of finding what that is. And certainly, as things get more sophisticated, right, the defenses get more sophisticated, the controls are more sophisticated, finding gaps or vulnerabilities in those kinds of things is certainly interesting, right? We see entire conferences that are dedicated to things that are kind of similar to this, right? The Black Hats, the DEF CONs, those kinds of conferences, the B-sides, right? All of these conferences that would love to, I'm sure, disclose something extremely, unique as far as a technique. Those are what all of those, all of the presentations and keynote speech kind of things are about, are things that are new research and new techniques, new tactics, new exploits, right? So very interesting, very interesting. And if you're joining the stream, definitely let me know in the chat where you're tuning in from. I'd love to hear what what time it is, what time of day it is where you're at, right? We get people from all over the world that are tuning into the show, so it's always interesting to see people tuning in from different countries. I think we've had Pakistan, we've had United States, we've had Africa, Asia, we've had all kinds of different countries and locations around the world. So always great to see people tuning in from all over. Next article here, Google rejected 2.28 million risky Android apps from Play Store in 2023. Google blocked 2.28 million Android apps from being published on Google Play after finding various policy violations that could threaten users' security. Additionally, the tech giant reports it identified and blocked 333,000 Google Play accounts that uploaded malware, fraudulent apps, or engaged in repeated grave policy violations. For comparison, in 2022, Google blocked 1.5 million bad, and it's in quotes, bad apps, and suspended 173,000 developer accounts for severe violations of the store's policies. So we have even seen applications get into the App Store, right? Because a lot of times too, like these fraudulent apps, these are not always things that it's like you upload it and it detects it's fraudulent before it even hits the store, right? There are apps that hit the store, both in iOS and in the Google Play Store, that end up being discovered or identified as or labeled as malicious apps, right? So then that means people downloaded those apps and unfortunately suffered whatever consequence was related to that application. So that's a pretty tall task, though. That's a lot of applications and a lot of submissions. It's like, how do you get through all of that information and actually automate these checks or make it really efficient to go through these applications, right? This effort is based on the so-called SAFE principles, which Google highlights as S for safeguard users, A, advocate for developer protection, F, foster responsible innovation, and E, evolve platform defenses. In addition to blocking nearly 2.3 million apps and suspending 333,000 offending publishers, Google has rejected or remediated 200,000 app submissions requesting access to risky permissions such as SMS content and background location data without a good reason. So applications that are requesting things that kind of raise a flag, right? And create suspicion. Why would you be asking for permission to these certain things? What are you going to do with that data? Where is that data going to be housed? Where is that data going to be shared with? Like all of those kinds of things, right? Finally, Google has partnered with 31 SDK providers, so software development kit providers, to ensure that only a minimal amount of sensitive information is collected and shared from devices where apps utilizing these SDKs are installed. Information sharing, data sharing is always a concern with things like this, with applications on cell phones or on computers, on tablets, all of those kinds of things, right? So the applications that are going into these app stores, that's a huge concern, right? Is where are you sending this data to? Where are you sharing it? Who are you sharing it with, right? Why are you sharing it? All of those things are legitimate questions that need to be answered with these applications because people are downloading these applications. And if it's like a game where you have no business sharing off somebody's SMS messages, right, their text messages, then why would you do that, right? That seems kind of suspicious. So certainly interesting as far as the provider of the App Store, right? Google, they're kind of like the service provider of that system. And certainly we expect them to do a little bit of vetting for those applications. All right, let's keep moving here. Next article, Honeywell says USB malware attacks on industrial orgs becoming more sophisticated. Go! Industrial giant Honeywell has published its 6th annual report on the threat posed by USB-borne malware to industrial organizations, warning of an increase in sophistication. Some data has remained largely unchanged in the past year compared to the 2 previous years. Of all the malware detected by Honeywell's product on USB drives, 31% was part part of or associated with a campaign known to target industrial systems or companies. Remember, we're talking about critical infrastructure, so that can fall into industrial companies, right? Certainly. Similar to the past years, more than half of the malware was designed to target or spread via USB drives, which can help the malware cross air gaps. In addition, roughly half of the malware was capable of connecting to a remote CNC server, so command and control server, C2 server. Those are all common names or terminology that we use for that kind of connection. So if you are not aware of this, right, or you haven't been studying some of these cybersecurity certifications or content, things like that, one of the things that companies have frequently in the past been exposed to and compromised by are USB drives or USB connections, right? So like a little USB flash drive. One of the kind of the common stories that we hear about is like penetration testers or hackers going into a parking lot, right, with a USB flash drive, writing like company salaries on it or something like that, and just sprinkling it throughout the parking lot. And then, wouldn't you know it, somebody finds that, plugs it into a system, and all of a sudden now that system is compromised, right? This is a very, very common technique and a very common story that in all kinds of cybersecurity circles that we've talked about. So that is certainly a concern, right? When it's a test, when it's actually a real thing and somebody can just walk into your organization and plug in a USB drive, whether that's an employee, whether that is a malicious attacker or outsider, it doesn't really matter because that's just dangerous in general. So one of the things that you have to be concerned about are your USB ports, right? Do you whitelist devices? Do you just allow things to be plugged into your systems? Certainly, if you're in these highly secure areas, you better be whitelisting your USB devices, right? And not just allowing anything to be plugged into any USB ports. One of the common things is disable the unused ports, right? Just like you would with a firewall or a router or anything like that, you need to disable those ports that aren't being used, whitelist the devices in there that are plugged in, and certainly that can create some additional overhead, right? As far as administering that, if you have to change devices like keyboards or something like that, but it is far more secure. You also can disable things like the autoplay or the auto run feature on systems. So instead of you plug in a USB drive like you do in your home computer, and on Windows it automatically runs whatever it is, you disable that feature, right? And so these are all very common controls that need to be implemented, especially when we're talking about critical infrastructure, industrial companies, things like that, where it's a little bit different of a game, right? It also says, similar to the past 2 years, 80% of the detected malware was capable of causing disruption to operational technology OT processes, including loss of view, loss of control, or system outages. This includes ransomware wipers and malware specifically designed to manipulate or disrupt control, such as Industroyer 2 and Black Energy. Quote here, it says, new evidence indicates that adversaries are pursuing LOTL, so living off the land strategies, combining more sophisticated detection, avoidance, and persistence techniques with execution techniques that leverage the inherent capabilities of the target systems, Honeywell said. So living off the land is basically, instead of bringing a bunch of malware tools, right, and just packaging it up and putting it onto a system and kind of just loading or installing all of that stuff, instead of doing that, we're living off binaries and things that are already on the system that are part of the operating system, and we're just leveraging those to exploit the system, to call back to a system, right? Call back to a C2 server, all of these kinds of things, right? So that is definitely a more effective strategy if you're trying to attack a system, because now you don't have to rely on bringing in your tools, because one of the problems is if you bring your tools, then you have to be able to upload your tools, right? Or install your tools, do these things. If you can just use whatever is already there, well, that certainly makes things a lot easier, right? So definitely a very interesting strategy and kind of shift from how things have been previously. Now, it does say roughly 20% of the USB-borne malware was content-based, abusing existing document and scripting functions rather than exploiting new vulnerabilities, right? So they're looking for the low-hanging fruit. They're looking for things that are already vulnerable instead of these kind of brand new things, and really things that should be fixed, most likely, right? It depends on what it is exactly, but that's a lot of times the case, right? It's a lot of these vulnerabilities are long-standing vulnerabilities that you should have patched, should have taken care of, but you didn't, and they're just so trivial to exploit, right? It makes it easy. Don't have to put in all that extra legwork. So always interesting, this attack vector with USB drives and how that is even still a thing, but it certainly is, right? There's so many companies that still allow that, and certainly they always suffer, right? No! Not to mention, employees can just plug in a USB drive and take data off your network. That's another danger, which makes me, wonder why you haven't disabled USB drives, but whatever, that's your network. Next article here, UK becomes first country to ban default bad passwords on IoT devices. 7 years ago, a cyber attack left many of the most popular websites based in the United States inaccessible. For 3 extended periods on October 21st, 2016, internet users were left without their doses of Twitter, CNN, and Netflix, among other popular sites. I don't know if you were paying attention to the cyber world or these things back in 2016, but I certainly remember that. That's always big news when major platforms go out, right? It's definitely going to make the headlines, especially if it's a long time where these sites are down. While the attack was unsophisticated, it was large. The volume of traffic sent to the dying servers was generated by a botnet of internet-connected consumer devices from wireless cameras through to Wi-Fi routers. While they pleaded guilty just over a year later, their invention raised the specter of something much more long-lasting, the specter of just how much harm could be caused by sloppy security practices among Internet of Things IoT producers, particularly the widespread use of default usernames and passwords that allowed the Mirai botnet to automatically infect them and spread itself to around 300,000 devices, all of which could be ordered to target anything else connected to the internet. So default passwords, default creds, default credentials, default logins, right? Like all of those aspects of this, those are always of concern, right? When you get a device, you get a router, you get a switch, you get a computer, whatever, right? You get a smart thermostat, a smart refrigerator, and it comes with default creds, default login credentials. That should be a concern, because one of the most common things that an attacker can try right off the bat is the default credentials, right? These default credentials, believe it or not, they're just sitting on the internet, right? You can find these for just about anything that you want, and it just makes it so easy if you haven't changed them, right? And so these devices that are coming just preloaded with this, right from the jump, they are vulnerable, right, to using these default credentials. And if you have a user that either can't or is incapable of changing these default credentials, well, then yeah, no wonder why they're getting exploited, right? There's nothing that can be done about it, or they just didn't do anything about it. So that is dangerous, and that is dangerous at a wide scale, right? Because as a vendor, if you're producing 100,000 devices, for example, and you're using the same credentials on everything, well, that's not helpful, right? That's actually creating a huge problem. And we see this in this incident, right? And so with botnets, I mean, if that's the case, you can exploit a lot of systems and create a massive botnet with relative ease, which is definitely a concern. Botnets are always a concern. Now it says on Monday, the United Kingdom became the first country in the world to ban default guessable usernames and passwords from these IoT devices. Unique passwords installed by default are still permitted. So I'm curious to know more about this whole thing with the default usernames and passwords. Like, how are you defining that? Where are you getting that information from? Are you just using like one of these lists where it's like the top common 100 passwords and login names? Are you just copying that off of Kali or something like that? Where are you getting that list? But certainly there are some common passwords and common credentials that are used, right? Like admin 12345 password, root, all of those kinds of things. Admin. Those common ones, those default kind of guessable ones are very easy, right? Like you wouldn't need some sophisticated tool to guess some of this stuff, honestly. But it is an interesting step, an interesting requirement for sure. And it says under the PTSI, which is the governing body or the body that's pushing this out, weak or easily guessable default passwords such as admin or 12345 are explicitly banned because we just talked about those, right? And manufacturers are also required to publish contact details so users can report bugs. So that's certainly interesting. It's an interesting requirement. I think that should have been something that you would have done before, right? And not been forced to do. But yeah, it is going to be interesting to kind of see this as far as like what kind of system or generation scheme are these companies going to use to create these passwords, right? Because that's another thing. It's like you create some kind of system and eventually it's going to come out, right? Like eventually somebody's going to figure out what you're doing. It's going to be an either an outsider that figures that out or an insider that just leaks it. Who knows? But this is definitely not, it's not going to be completely unbreakable, right? For sure. So default creds, always interesting, right? And if you don't know, and a lot of requirements for like compliance and security best practices and things like that, one of the requirements is to change your default creds. So if you're not already doing that, that should be part of your deployment process. That's a standard 101 kind of thing. So you should be doing that. Make sure you're doing that. Please, please, please. Even if you're not in the UK, do it. Change your default creds. Stop using them, please. All right. Next article, U.S. Post Office phishing sites get as much traffic as the real one. No! Security researchers analyzing phishing campaigns that target United States Postal Service, USPS, saw that the traffic to the fake domains is typically similar to what the legitimate site records, and it is even higher during holidays. Phishing operations typically target people's sensitive information, account credentials, card details, things like that, or try to trick users into making payments to fraudulent shops or covering fees supposedly requiring for clearing items that have been placed on hold for various reasons. I don't know if you've seen messages like this. I have definitely seen messages like this, and it is quite annoying when you see this, right? It's definitely one of those irritating things, and yeah. So it does seem like it's kind of like ticking up though, as far as like how often it's happening. During the 2023 holiday season, Akamai Technologies observed a significant volume of DNS queries going to combo squatting domains that impersonate the USPS service. So similar types of domains. They started investigating USPS themed phishing in October 2023 after an employee received a suspicious SMS that redirected to a site containing malicious JavaScript code. And they give an example here of what the actual text message looks like. It says, if you're on the podcast and you can't read this, it says the USPS package has arrived at the warehouse and cannot be delivered to incomplete address information. Please confirm your address in the link within 12 hours. It gives an address or a URL, and then the typical please reply to Y, then exit the SMS, open the SMS activation link again, or copy the link to Safari browser and open it. The U.S. Postal Team wishes you a wonderful day. Have a great day. Have a great day, and click the link so you can get compromised by an attacker. Isn't that nice? That's nice of them to put this greeting and this wishing you a great day, right? The The design of these pages is very convincing and appears as exact replicas of the authentic USPS website with realistic tracking pages for status updates. So we've seen this, right? Like a lot of these websites are getting better and better as far as what they look like, the legitimacy that they're trying to convey for people that go to them, right? And that is one reason why they're able to convince a lot of people, right, that they're on a legitimate website, right? Because it looks real, right? Sometimes it's even functional. It can do certain things. It says in one case, the phishing actors set up what looks like a dedicated postage item shop, which started getting significant traffic in late November as consumers sought to buy gifts and collectibles for the holiday season. So yeah, if you can add things like a postage item shop and like, again, other things that legitimize or make people think that it's really the legitimate website, they're going to be like, no way an attacker would go to this extraordinary amount of links to create, these additional features or things in these websites. Like that's kind of what people are thinking as the wheels are turning. And they're thinking more of, oh, it's going to be like an incomplete website, or links will be broken, images won't show up, like all of those kinds of things. And then that is not a legitimate website, right? Attackers are getting very good at setting these up, and it's really not that difficult to make a fairly legitimate looking website. And then if you can make one, you just have to replicate that process and make multiple. And now you have all these different locations that you can kind of spread out your attack to, right? So it's getting pretty crazy out there, right? As far as domains, they do give some breakdowns of the domains and how many were created. So they had about 4,400 .com domains with over 271,000 queries, a .top domain, 3,000 domains, 274,000 queries, .shop, 566 domains with 58,000 queries, .xyz, which is a pretty popular up and coming domain extension or domain, 397 domains with 30,000 queries, .org, 352 domains with 16,000 queries, and .info, 257 domains with 7,500 queries. So there's a kind of a collection of different top level domains in here. And the total was over 1 million queries. Whoa. That's a lot, right? So very interesting article. Again, legitimate looking website is pretty easy to create, pretty easy to trick people, right? The more legitimate that it looks, the easier it is to trick people, because people are going to believe what they see, especially if it has a full functioning shop or something that actually operates or actually works, right? So yeah, good article, good article. With that being said, that is the last article for today's episode. Again, this is Cyber Threat Intel. This is episode number 26. I'm your host, John Good. It is Tuesday, April 30th, 2024. And remember, depending on where you're listening to the show or watching the show, there's a whole bunch of different ways that you can access the show. If you want to watch the live stream and actually hop on here and chat, get your CPE credit, or if you want to listen to the podcast format, then you can certainly do that too. We're on YouTube, we're on YouTube, we're on Twitter or X, we're on Facebook, LinkedIn, all under the John Good Cyber profile. We are also on all the popular podcasting platforms. Just search for Cyber Threat Intel. You'll find us there. Or you can go to cyberthreatintel.com. Again, cyberthreatintel.com, and all the platforms are listed there, and you can access all the content there. You can also access the article feed on there as well. So if you go there, you'll be able to see all the articles that we talked about in this episode and all the other episodes, as well as some other articles that we put in there. We put highlights in there, comments in there, things like that you can get some more additional value from the show doing that way as well. If you're a sponsor and you're looking to sponsor content, make sure to check out the description, because there is more information about how you can kick that conversation off and how you can actually sponsor content. Again, we love our sponsors. make sure to show our sponsors some love. This episode is sponsored by Cyber Threat Intel, so definitely make sure to check them out. And with that being said, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up for today, and I'll see you in the next one. See you later. Are you tired of overpaying for cybersecurity training? Are you interested in training from industry professionals? Are you looking for cybersecurity career services? If you answered yes to any of those questions, then cybertrainingpro.com is the perfect platform for you. At Cyber Training Pro, we're a one-stop shop for all your cybersecurity needs. We can train you for industry certifications or just improve your overall knowledge and skills in a certain area. Unlike other platforms, we don't stop there. We can also coach you throughout your career, practice your interview skills, or create a high-performing resume with our career services. Cybertrainingpro.com isn't just another training platform. Students get exclusive access to our private community where we go beyond training courses to provide additional content, tips and tricks, and engagement with both other students and staff. Look, by the year 2025, there could be as many as 3.5 million job openings in cybersecurity. With so much opportunity, why not maximize your career potential with a platform that cares about your success? Come join us at cybertrainingpro.com and start building your future today.